In Romans 12:2, Paul said to stop being molded by this system of things, but be transformed by making your mind over. We are to be careful that this system does not mold or shape our thinking. The verse said to make over your minds, not
hand over your minds.
Watchtower and their Jehovah's Witnesses are becoming infamous throughout the world for their systematic sexual abuse of children and the legal extremes they go through to protect their pedophiles.
And think about this. We will not need doctors or lawyers after Armageddon, but we will need carpenters and plumbers and similar construction trades.
Considering Watchtower's massive sell-off of Kingdom Halls and their mounting lawsuits, it seems Watchtower has less need for construction workers and a greater need for lawyers, especially if they expect to defend themselves in their next legal Armageddon for the systematic emotional abuse of every current and former Jehovah's Witness.
Have you ever wondered if you've suffered emotional abuse? The American Psychological Association defines emotional abuse as a pattern of behavior wherein someone repeatedly and deliberately harms another's mental health and overall well-being through non-physical acts. Emotional abuse is harder to spot than physical abuse because the psychological markers of it are made less obvious.
In a manual published by DHS, which aims to help law enforcement and healthcare professionals identify the subtle signs of emotional abuse, it says, "Be careful not to underestimate the damage of long-term emotional, verbal, or psychological abuse. Over time, verbal and psychological abuse can impact a person severely, in the same way as a violent physical attack. The person may have trauma-related behaviors such as seen in physical and sexual abuse."
Has an emotional abuser ever intentionally embarrassed you or made you feel ashamed? Have they said things to you like, "I'm the only one who could ever love you," or "You'll never find someone as good as me"? Emotional abusers may use humiliation as a tactic in ways like degrading comments about your appearance, intelligence, or personal success. Small insults and slights towards you can negatively impact your self-esteem when they're constantly repeated back to you. In an emotionally abusive relationship, the abuser repeatedly insults you, even after you've asked them to stop, or they hold you to impossibly high standards and then depreciate you when you don't measure up to those too high standards. They use critical or threatening words to make you break down or begin to doubt yourself.
But why do you judge your brother? Or why do you also look down on your brother? Here's a valid point.
Emotional abusers will take advantage of this as a way to convince you to maintain your relationship with them. This is all a harmful tactic to keep you tied down to them.
For it is written, "As surely as I live, says Jehovah, to me every knee will bend, and every tongue will make open acknowledgement to God." Here, Jehovah guarantees that one day, every person on earth will be a true worshiper of Him. Will you be there? Will your son or daughter be among those alive at that time?
Do you find yourself complying with the demands of a close relationship because you fear the consequences of disagreeing with the other person? This is a sign that they hold the power of intimidation over you. It might look like unwarranted verbal threats and harassment towards you. These are dangerous patterns of intimidation that can also potentially lead to physical abuse.
May we all decide to play it safe before our God.
Has someone in your life ever tried to control everything you do? Even though it may come off as well-intentioned, it crosses the line when they start to micromanage your life and refuse to listen or talk with you about your personal goals.
In addition to promoting divine education, what secular skills will we be promoting? Skills that'll be useful to God's organization now and after Armageddon.
Emotional abusers can make you dependent on them for any decision, big or small. They'll gaslight you, manipulate you, and in turn leave you questioning your own judgment. you find yourself scared that making a seemingly harmless decision will anger the other person, it's likely that you're dealing with emotional abuse in that relationship.
So parents and children, you need to have a goal and you need to have a plan. If you're missing either one, Satan will provide it for you.
Has an emotional abuser ever isolated you from your friends and family? This person will try to isolate you from the people who care about you. They don't want others in your circle to pick up on the warning signs of abuse. They might threaten to end the relationship if the other person expresses a desire to visit with the other person.
If we are in continued association with those who do not believe the same, it can erode our thinking and convictions.
This is another method of enacting control over you through the power of rejection. When you're unexpectedly cut off from their support, it stirs up a sense of insecurity and self-blame. When you're isolated, you're also dependent on them for emotional support. And when they grow cold towards you, it can leave you spinning. Another example of this is called public rejection, where they ignore you in public or around friends and family as a form of punishment.
Oh, look, Mom!
Don't talk to her.
Why not?
She's not your aunt anymore.
The emotional abuse of Jehovah's Witness children begins in infancy and continually increases throughout their childhood. They are forced to view graphically violent images, which normalizes violence for them. And they are forced to contemplate on and make personal decisions about various adult topics.
I'll never make Jehovah sad. Me neither. I will never be stumbled.
Very good, Caleb.
Jehovah's Witness children are isolated from all extracurricular activities or celebration, and if they ever try to participate, they must face ridicule.
Wait! I thought he can't have it.
Yeah, which is it?
I didn't want it anyway. But I thought the Bible says you can't.
It says... Come on, what does it say? I'm not sure.
But you came to my house the other day to talk about the Bible, don't you remember?
Yeah, maybe that wasn't me? That was you, but you're scared.
Then the Jehovah's Witness child must return home to face scriptural threats, interrogations, and punishment, sometimes in the form of physical abuse.
I'm home. Can you remember if Jesus celebrated his birthday?
No.
Do you remember when Peter said he would never stumble?
I will never be stumbled.
Very good, Caleb.
What do you think you have to do?
Talk to Jehovah.
That's right. You need to pray to ask for forgiveness. You need to pray to ask for forgiveness. You need to pray to ask for forgiveness.
Oh, wait! I'm gonna need to explain birthdays. Can you help me?
Of course. Do you like presents and treats?
Yes.
But do you want them like this?
We know that teens everywhere face many challenges, and we feel for you. Of course, I was once a teenager, but I can't even imagine some of the situations that you find yourselves in.
My classmates and teachers always respected me, but this year things were different. My class was organizing a Christmas party. I was asked to help, but I refused. My classmates and even my teacher made fun of me. I went to see the principal because I thought he would understand me. but unfortunately he didn't. I felt I had been treated unfairly. I felt that the most important thing I could do was to uphold Jehovah's reputation. So, I decided to explain my position to the class.
Recently after school, I saw Tamiko give a good witness. She even started a Bible study. But not everyone was a fan, especially these kids. They saw me out preaching last week. They started saying things like, "No one wants to read your garbage. Why do you always push your ideas on people? Do your parents force you?" At that point, I would have given almost anything for them to leave me alone. Kevin and I were having a great morning. We met a lot of nice people. But then we saw those same kids from school. Kevin said that we should just leave and that we didn't need any trouble. At that point, I could feel my palms starting to sweat. But I knew I'd have to face them again.
We hope that you'll enjoy and benefit from future episodes of My Teen Life. This new series is another way the governing body prepares Jehovah's people to cope with today's challenges
and to be ready for what's coming.
Now, if you just take a look at today's text, it says, "Come and witness the activities of Jehovah." Witness. Now, according to a dictionary, a witness is someone who has personal knowledge of something. So how can we be witnesses of Jehovah? What personal knowledge do we have of his activities?
Secret letter that sent shockwaves through the Jehovah's Witnesses. A letter that allegedly urged elders to tamper with potential evidence of damning claims against the church.
Lisa Flynn, head of the Abuse Law Department at Shine Lawyers, says this letter, obtained by a current affair, is another example of the organisation protecting themselves and their reputation ahead of the laws of Australia and the needs of survivors.
We are writing to provide a few general reminders about confidential records. There is generally no need for the notes to be retained. This allows each elder to understand how the individual really feels about his wrongdoing, about his relationship with Jehovah, and about his determination to avoid sinning seriously against God in the future.
I think that this organisation does see themselves as above the law.
Please endeavour to frame this in a positive way, perhaps highlighting some Bible principles that the person has been encouraged to apply more fully.
The Royal Commission found many Jehovah's Witnesses' policies and practices were outdated and failed to protect children from abuse. A number of changes were recommended, but we've seen little progress from the organisation.
Jehovah's Witness children are also taught another meaning for the word witness, that establishes the sacrifice they must be willing to make in order to protect Watchtower's secret criminal activity.
Much of this witnessing has been accomplished under persecution or hardship and a great self-sacrifice. This is to be expected, for the word witness, as here used, is a translation of the Greek martyr, meaning one who bears witness by his death. This emphasizes that we, as Jehovah's Witnesses, should be self-sacrificing, determined always to expend ourselves and to keep integrity under all circumstances, even to the death if necessary.
Many public educators have a difficult time while attempting to teach Jehovah's Witness children. There are many internet forums where teachers seek advice on how to handle various situations that arise while teaching these emotionally abused children. A master's research project out of the University of Massachusetts states in its abstract, while the church seems optimistic about their high school children behaving according to the socialization, The study finds that some of the children simultaneously, using dominant and non-dominant cultural capitals, following pressure by their peers and teachers. For example, some witness students reported intentionally hiding and or discrediting their beliefs at school. After returning home, some witness children adjust back to the approved behavior. The study illuminates the various ways in which the students adjust according to their environment. This behavior can cause many of the Jehovah's Witness children to later develop dissociative identity disorder, as well as other mental illnesses. Watchtower has systematically, emotionally abused its congregants for over a century, using freedom of religion as a legal protection. But are there other legal remedies available? Please consider the following in its entirety, and see how it may apply to your own circumstances.
Again, Attorney Steve Vondran, civil litigation attorney. We are talking in this video about intentional infliction of emotional distress. This is the tort of outrage. This is a very important civil litigation topic and bar exam topic, okay? This is very important that you understand this tort, know how to spot it, know how to find it, and for attorneys like us, know how to litigate these cases. So let's talk real quick about the elements required to prove this tort. So without further ado, let's head to the Attorney Steve litigation whiteboard. Okay, let's back this puppy up here. Okay, so we have got on the board here, we are talking about intentional infliction of emotional distress, what some people call the tort of outrage. The tort of outrage, okay? So on your bar exam, on your paralegal exams, legal exams, you are looking for some atrocious conduct, something that somebody's doing to somebody else that makes you go, my God, what are they doing? That sort of thing. If you spot that and you read those facts closely and you spot that, you're going to score your big points. Let's take a look at the board here, okay? So we have intentional infliction of emotional distress. We have our elements, okay? When you see that atrocious conduct, you're going to spot the issue and you're going to lay down the rule, okay? Here's the rule. The intentional or reckless causing severe mental or emotional distress by extreme and outrageous conduct. By extreme and outrageous conduct. Okay, so let's take a closer look at these elements. Okay, so as with all of your intentional torts, this has to be an intentional tort. Intent, we know, is, you talk about on your exam, knowledge with substantial certainty. Knowledge with substantial certainty that you're going to cause this emotional distress, things like fright, humiliation, anxiety, trauma, those kinds of things. Knowledge with substantial certainty that you're going to cause that consequence is what's required. Okay, so let's check that off our box. But here's one of the interesting things about the intentional torts. I think it's the only one where it can actually be reckless as well. So even if you can't get to the high standard of knowledge with substantial certainty, you look to reckless. Can we show that it was reckless, an extreme disregard or an indifference to whether or not this person would suffer emotional distress, the plaintiff? Extreme reckless disregard of the rights of others, okay? The failure to have any sense of what's going on here. So reckless. So the tort can be proven by showing intentional or reckless conduct. So you're going to want to look at these on your exam. Don't be surprised if they slip reckless in there. Why? Everybody can tell intent. You know, the guy slugged the guy in the face with a block of salami. Okay, well, there's your battery, there's your intentional, extreme and outrageous act, those kinds of things. But reckless is a little more difficult. So be looking for that. Make sure you're going to talk about that on your exam. Bingo, you got the points, baby. Okay, so again, this is one of the torts where you need to intend the consequences. In a lot of your other intentional torts, all you need to do is intend the act. For example, a battery. If you pull someone's chair out, all you have to do is intend to do the act. But this is one of those interesting torts, and I think conversion is the other one. You have to intend the consequence. So you actually have to intend to cause this consequence. Fright, humiliation, anxiety, pain, suffering, all these things, okay? So you have to intend that to happen. That has to be your intent, your result. Under this tort, this is also unique in that it does not allow the transferred intent doctrine. So if you remember from your other torts, battery, assault, whatever, if you're intending to commit a battery and you commit a false imprisonment, with the intent transfers, okay? But this is one of those unique torts where the intent does not transfer, so don't get caught up in that. And by the way, if you can point that out and see that and highlight that, the transferred intent doctrine does not apply to this specific tort. Bingo, that's points, baby. That's points on your bar exam. That's how you do it. That's how you're going to get to the next level. Okay, and where you can't show intent, we're still on our first prong. Look to negligent infliction of emotional distress, which is also a tort. So don't miss out on that one. Get your points for talking about that. Even assuming that you cannot prove intent or recklessness, plaintiff may have a cause of action for negligent infliction of emotional distress. However, physical manifestation of the injury may be required. Physical manifestation proving the injury may be required. So that's what you want to talk about. You hammer that on your intentional torts, you got it. Okay, let's go to causation. This is similar to all other torts. This is similar to everything we do as lawyers. You have to prove the wrongdoer caused the damages, okay? It's virtually everything I know, unless you have a strict liability tort, and even that has its own issues. But you have to prove the defendant caused, and that's again your actual and your proximate cause. And that goes back to whether there were foreseeable intervening events, whether there were criminal acts of the others, of third parties that caused the damages. So you have to take a close look, but don't neglect to discuss causation on your exam. Now, there is a special category for third-party witnesses. This is the close family member. So if you look on your exam, you spot this is big points. The close family member that witnesses an act of intentional infliction of emotional distress and then wants to claim their own damages for witnessing event. The question is, can they do that? The general rule is yes. The general rule is if it was a close family member, if they were in close proximity to the event, if they were actually witnessed and perceived the event, and the defendant was aware that they were present. So, you know, if you have a case of police brutality or something, beating someone up, police beating up a kid in front of their mom, and the mom's standing there watching this, and she's suffering all this severe mental and emotional distress caused by these wrongful, let's assume they're wrongful acts of the defendants, she can potentially recover for her own emotional distress. So that's a really big factor. If you pick that up, again, big bonus points. That's what you're looking for. Okay, again, severe. Now, when we're talking severe, you know, these are the things where people will call our office and say, you know, I had a really bad day. Somebody insulted me. They really hurt my feelings, and I had a hard time sleeping last night. That's probably not going to be enough for an emotional distress tort. We are talking about extreme, severe types of damages that are beyond that which a reasonable, ordinary person should be required to tolerate in a civilized society. So these are sign of the buzzwords, the language you're going to use. Beyond all, dealing with pain beyond all bounds of decency that a reasonable person should have to be expected to tolerate. If you have objective evidence of it, that's going to help. If you have you're breaking out in a rash, those kinds of things will help. If you have medical records, those will help, those kinds of things. So you want to talk about whether there's objective evidence, and some courts will require that objective evidence. Some courts may say mere insults are enough. Some may say repetitive conduct over and over and over can become severe. So you may have somebody just insulting or bullying somebody day after day after day after day. Repetition can take an act that may normally not be deemed extreme and outrageous and could actually make it become severe and help you with that cause of action. Bruised egos and insults may not be enough. So talk about this on your exam when you see it. Bruised egos, mere insults. Some things are protected by the First Amendment, right? So let's not forget that potential First Amendment argument in there. but we want something more than just the common everyday stuff that we're expected to deal with, okay? So we'll be talking about that. So that's our severe, we've got that checked off. Mental and emotional distress, we talked about these. These are all the things that can happen to a person when they go through shock and trauma and something outrageous, you know, fear, humiliation, grief, anguish, post-traumatic stress disorder is something that's recognized. So these are some things that you want to talk about: loss of sleep, loss of productivity, the inability to function, these kinds of things. So you want to be looking for making a case for your damages, which of course, don't forget to talk about this on your bar exam. I know they don't really hammer it in law school, but it's very important. What are your remedies? What are your remedies when you have some of these things? So you want to be talking about the loss of productivity, lost days at work, out-of-pocket loss, medical bills, pain and suffering, punitive damages. So you want to be talking about these kinds of things whenever you're talking about your torts, okay? So that'll take care of all that for us. Here's the kicker, the big final kicker. We'll send you off with this. The conduct must be extreme and outrageous. Okay, this is where I think the wheels come off for a lot of people, because you'll have all these different things that go on. You have emotional distress, you have intentional conduct, but the big kicker that you have to get over, the big hurdle, 20-foot high wall, is the conduct at issue must be extreme and outrageous. What does that mean? This is known as, once again, as I said from the outset, the tort of outrage. It's got to be something outrageous, something where people would just shout at the top of their lungs, "That is crazy! That's nuts! That's atrocious! What's going on here?" That's what you're looking for, something outrageous, okay? And the buzzwords you want to put on your exam, the buzzwords that we put in our legal briefs, is beyond all bounds of decency, beyond all bounds of decency to which a reasonable member of society is expected to tolerate. So it's beyond all bounds of decency. This is not, you know, your common everyday things and little nudges and pushes and things that drive you nuts. It's got to be something that's extreme and outrageous. This is usually a question of fact for the trier of fact. Make sure you talk about that. There is some discretion that in some cases a judge may have some discretion, but in general we're talking about questions of fact. On your exams, we also want to talk about special plaintiffs, especially vulnerable plaintiffs. There's 3 generally recognized classes of vulnerable plaintiffs. You have your kids, you have your elders, okay, sometimes triggering also financial elder abuse claims or other elder abuse types of claims, and you have your pregnant women, kids, and elderly. So you're going to be looking for those. If you see those on your fact patterns, you're going to jump all over it and you're going to go, aha, this could be IIED, the tort of outrage. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to scoop up all my points, and you're going to talk about these special protected classes, okay? You're also going to be looking for positions of power, abuses of power, the school principal, the police officer, the employer, people that have positions of superiority. These are things that need to be factored in. Also repetition, how many times is this happening? If it's happening 2, 3, 4, 5 times, something that's simple may become the tort of outrage. Okay, so that's something to think about. Finally, you have your common carriers. Don't miss this. I know when you're caught up in the bar exam, you have so many laws and rules and facts in your head, but don't miss the common carrier, the bus driver, the airplane stewardess, the taxi driver, airplanes, trains, automobiles, all that stuff. Somebody does this for a living, the innkeeper, somebody who does this for a living is going to be held to a higher standard. So you may not need to show as much of these other elements where you have common carriers and innkeepers. So you catch that. If you catch these issues, you are nailing it. You're knocking it out of the ballpark. If you need an attorney to handle your emotional distress claim, give us a call. You can find us at askattorneysteve.com. That's askattorneysteve.com. If you need more information about our bar review materials, slaythebar.com. Do we charge you? No, we don't charge you. Everybody else charges you, right? Everybody wants a lot of your money. This is free information. The tort of intentional infliction of emotional distress. Attorney Steve Vondran, thanks for listening. Feel free to share this video on your social media networks, and don't forget to subscribe to to our video channel. You want to keep this good stuff coming. Have a great day.
Despite Watchtower's sponsored content and controlled opposition, in recent years many have displayed their outrage concerning Watchtower's physical, psychological, sexual, and emotional abuse of children by disrupting their pseudo-religious meetings at Kingdom Halls in an effort to warn congregants to protect their children from the organization.
They've had enough of all this covering up of child molesting. Change the two-witness rule. Change it, it's wicked.
My mother died from the blood doctrine. Is that what Jesus wants? Does Jesus want mercy or sacrifice? Jesus wants mercy, not sacrifice. I beg you, please, my mother died from this. Please don't let her die for no reason. Her funeral home is right across the street. Her blood is on your hands.
Child abuse must be reported to the police.
We're not carrying any
You're
weapons,
carrying
officer.
weapons, you silly man.
You know what? We ruined one of your meetings. You ruined our childhood. See, not you personally. You don't know me. You got children in there right now. You're doing the exact same thing, dude. You know what? Any of them that has reading comprehension, any of them that is understanding, will be back here one day with a chip on their shoulder. Bet that.
Sadly, though, the abuse of Jehovah's Witness children reaches outside of the organization and is even spread by the children themselves. Although most lawsuits for intentional infliction of emotional distress would be filed against individual Jehovah's Witnesses, particularly elders, Watchtower could possibly have third-party liability. Watchtower claims that its elders are spiritual physicians, which is simply pseudo-religious jargon they use in order to give psychiatric and medical advice without proper licensing. In the Cannabis Health Index, page 34, it references scientific research on epigenetics, which is a new and still evolving term, generally used to describe the study of environmental signals, such as temperature, nutrition, or emotions that initiate specific change in a genetic expression via a direct pathway into the cellular nucleus, without changing the DNA sequence. For instance, studies on mice have shown that emotional material from traumatic experiences produces immediate change in the biology of the animals, and that these changes can be passed on to the next generation of offspring, leaving offspring more vulnerable to developing anxiety disorders such as phobia or PTSD. Also, there are clinical trials indicating that chronically suppressed or repressed emotions exacerbate a variety of medical conditions such as hypertension, cardiovascular disease, and breast cancer, and thus eventually reduce life expectancy. Some may wonder how many emotional abuse victims Watchtower has created since 1879. But the real question is how many more will be victimized before the end of Watchtower's system of things.
So I want to bring that point out first, that this is about, and you know, Lloyd, from us working together, how important factual information is to me and not putting out something overly sensational. I mean, look, this leaked documents, yeah, that's sensational. Stolen
it's
documents.
sensational on its own without needing to be embellished. Yeah.